What's up YouTube, it's JackalGoldKick, and I'm here with Larry the Batman fan. We're going to be doing a collaboration video talking about just some terrible games we played, some of the worst video games that we have played. So, for those who don't know, Larry the Batman fan used to go by Larry Cool the Gamer. And now he goes by Larry the Batman fan, so me and him are actually cool nowadays. So, just thought that you know that. But, yeah, I'm going to go through a few that I have. I only own one of these, because the other I'm going to mention, I traded it in because it sucked, and the other one's a digital thing. I never bought it physically. So my first thing I guess I'll talk about, I don't know how many I'll show or to think of, I'll just try to come up with a spot. So my first choice for a terrible game that I played is going to be from the Devil May Cry HD collection, Devil May Cry 2. This game sucks so much. It's terrible. It's a terrible game. Now, I couldn't really get into the series. It's not my cup of tea, honestly. But I can see why people like it. But DMC2 is a piece of trash. It is a terrible game. It just has... It's boring to play. The enemies in it are incredibly stupid. You got infested tank, infested chopper. Who thought those were cool enemies? Especially for a game like this. Like, who wants to fight an infested tank and an infested chopper? And those enemies, and a lot of the enemies in Devil May Cry 2, they're bullet sponges. They take forever to kill. The game's not really that challenging. There's really no combos in it. You can just spam your guns. It's so easy, even on the hardest difficulty. The level design is atrocious in Devil May Cry 2. It is just bland and just dull and just does not look good at all. Like, it is terrible level design. No creativity. There's no nothing to it. Like, it's on the level of Dead Rising 4's level design. It is terrible. Awful level design. No areas stick out. They all just have this like lifeless, no color to it. They just look so bland and dull. Like, the environments absolutely suck. And one of the only things I can say about the game is at least it's short, but it's technically kind of something you'll be tortured with for a bit, because there's two campaigns. There's Dante and then there's Lucia. And I would say some of the only positives of Devil May Cry 2, it's Dante's best design easily. I like the music that plays in the trailer. I like the submachine guns. I like the rolling around that Dante's character can do. But other than that, Devil May Cry 2 is a awful game. It is so bad. It's just extremely terrible. Like, one of the worst games I've played. So bad. When you play it, it's just not a fun game. It's very boring. It's got terrible level design, terrible enemies that I mentioned. It's not challenging. There's no combos in it. The graphic and level design is uninspired. The story is just, there really is nothing to it from what I remember. It's some guy that owns a corporation, and you and Lucia work together to stop him, and there's two different stories being told, and you just fight these enemies, and the enemies are pretty lame, and it's just a crappy game. So Devil May Cry 2 absolutely sucks. Terrible game. And that was a game that didn't have the same developers as 1, so you could tell they messed up doing that. I don't know why developers will take a series that people already like and they'll just give it to somebody else, and it never really goes well. There's only maybe one game I can think of where a different developer did a pretty good job, like Dead Rising 2, but yeah, Devil May Cry 2 absolutely sucks. Now, another crappy game that I played, I would say, is the co-op zombie game. The co-op zombie game absolutely sucks. I did a rant on that game years ago in the year 2013, back in the day. That game is awful. It's called Rant on the Co-op Zombie Game. It was some game on the Xbox Live Marketplace, and I saw it. Me and my friend talked about it when I was a kid, and I decided to make a video just ranting on it back in the day. And it is a terrible game. It's like a cheap knockoff of like Left 4 Dead or Call of Duty Nazi Zombies. It is just terrible. The level design and the graphics and the animation, the sound effects, it's just all cheap and lame and atrocious and just trash and not good. The demo I played of it was just sucked. It just was not a good game at all. From what I played, it was just completely terrible. The way it played and controlled, it just, from what I remember, just wasn't a good game whatsoever. Wasn't fun to play, and it was pretty atrocious. And it has a generic title, the co-op zombie game. Like, wow, that's the best title you could come up with. Like, even the name sucks. The name was terrible. It was just like a go from level to level first-person shooter zombie game, and it just felt like a cheap knockoff of Left 4 Dead or Nazi zombies. It was awful, and the setting was strange. Like, I revisited the rant video I made. The setting in that fucking game literally looks like Metropolis from Superman. Like, literally, I even said in the video, you look at the setting in that game, it looks like you're in Metropolis Superman shit. It's like, what the hell is this? They completely stole this design from Metropolis and Superman stuff, because it looks just like fucking Metropolis. So the setting, I noticed that about it too. So yeah, the co-op zombie game absolutely sucks. I don't remember anything else about the game that was bad. It was just a cheap, lame game. Just trash, absolute trash. Don't know if it has a physical copy. I only played the demo years ago in 2013. Another bad game I played that really sucked was Dead to Rights 2. Now, I heard Dead to Rights 1's actually really good, but the only one I played was Dead to Rights 2 because someone gave me some free PS2 games back in the day, and that was one of the ones I tried. Dead to Rights 2 was absolutely terrible. I could not finish that game. It was awful. It was like this generic, like, third-person, over-the-shoulder shooter, and it was just boring. It wasn't fun to play. You just went from one area to the next area just shooting bad guys, and that's all there really was to it. And it was just a terrible third-person over-the-shoulder shooter, and it was just generic and bland and not fun to play, and it just really was no good, honestly. The graphics on it, well, maybe it's because I was using PS2, but from what I remember, the graphics on it were pretty terrible, but maybe that was just because, you know, some games, you know, aren't going to have the best graphics as time goes on, but it just wasn't a fun game to play. I mean, I liked the aspect of having a wolf, or was like some kind of dog you had as a companion. You had the main character being voiced by Steve Bloom, which was cool, but I tried to get into that game, I just couldn't. It was like I said, it was this over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. I think you played as like a cop or something, and it was just terrible, honestly. It was a terrible video game. It just wasn't good, and I just couldn't get into it. It just felt so bland and generic and just shooting bad guys, going into a nightclub, and you went outside this nightclub, and I remember not caring for it at all and just thinking it was lame and absolute garbage. So that's another bad game I played. What are some other ones I could throw in here? I suppose I could throw in Dead Rising 4. I mean, when I first played Dead Rising 4, I found it fun, but I think it's because it was that new game feel. As time has passed on, I realized just how bad Dead Rising 4 is. It's a boring game. It killed the Dead Rising series so far, unless the reboot rumors are true. It wasn't really a Dead Rising game. The voice actor for Frank West was changed. It's a buggy, glitchy game even to this day. The environments are absolutely terrible. You got like 4 or 3 cities, and they all have the same look. It's not challenging at all. You got stupid new zombies, like the Evo zombies. They're trying to rip off Call of Duty or something. The way those zombies look, they were lame. Frank's dialogue is terrible. Vic was an annoying bitch, didn't like her. The only character I liked in that game was Brad. Their Brad. I thought it was stupid that his name was Brad. It's like, we already had a Brad. He was in a better game. But I did like Brad in DR4. It's a shame he wasn't in the game a lot. He should have been the main character. But the game was just easy to play. The time limit was gone, which was an essential, huge part of Dead Rising. So they got rid of the timer, which was really stupid, honestly. So the timer was gone. I traded that game in, so I don't have it anymore because it sucked. When I revisited it, it just doesn't hold up, and it just isn't a fun game to play. It felt, you know, that game feels like a generic open world game, like every other one, like Evil Within 2 or something like that, where you're just exploring areas and looting items and picking things up and doing these side missions for survivors, and there's all these safe houses with survivors that all look the exact fucking same. None of them look any different, and it just felt like a generic open world game. And the story is just awful. Frank goes to Willamette again, and he's trying to see what Vic's doing or something like that. I can't even remember. You got this lame new group called Obscurus. Phenotrans are way better. Obscurus was a lame group. The villain for that group was lame. She was just so generic and bland. They retconned Barnaby's story. It used to be that they were trying to make more meat because they were running out of meat and they messed up, but no, now it's because he was trying to achieve more immortality, which is just fucking stupid. They retcon that. Calder is lame. We got a talking zombie that's wearing an exosuit. What the hell is this shit? One of the worst areas in that game is the dam you go to as Frank, where you get in the exosuit and fight the exo boss. That is one of the worst areas I've ever seen in video game history. It is so bland and so dull and so uninspired. I was like, ugh. Like when you come across the area, you want to vomit because it's just so bland and dull. Not only the damn area, but all the other cities you explore. Everything about that game is just so bland and dull. Some of the only positives I guess I could give to the game is that I like Brad. I like the cars. I like how you can have all your clothes at your safe house. That's cool. But it was just, it doesn't hold up. It's not a good Dead Rising game. Got rid of the timer, changing Frank's voice actor, buggy and glitchy like hell. The environments and setting is just awful. It sucks. The game's not challenging at all. They get rid of the psychopaths, replace them with maniacs. There's really nothing special to them. They reuse music from past Dead Rising games, even in the DLC, the stupid ass DLC, Exosuit Golf. Yeah, because that's what I want to play in a Dead Rising game. I want to wear a fucking exosuit and play golf. It's fucking stupid. What were they thinking? Stupid ass exosuit golf DLC bullshit. Because I got Frank's big package, his big ass dick package, more like it. Whatever the fuck, trying to be sexual with the title. Dead Rising 4, Frank's big package, trying to be funny or something. Fucking, and it had the DLC in it. And you got the Frank mode, which is, there's so many stupid things about that. It's pretty much like, I never played it, but it's like Stubbs the zombie, Frank's back as a zombie and shit, and you play as him, and then he gets revived back to a person, because, you know, spoiler alert, even though I don't care to spoil it, because why would you want to play Dead Rising 4? It's terrible. He basically dies at the end of 4, but then he comes back as a zombie, which doesn't make sense, because one of the things they try to say is this new virus, Brad tries to tell Frank, this new virus you're dealing with, it's deadlier than the old one, so don't get bit. Even though it's supposed to be the same virus. He says the Santa Beza virus is supposed to be the same virus from part 1 that Frank was able to get a Zombrex for, but for some reason this time it affects Frank, even though didn't he get cured? Like, how is this even happening? And then Frank goes back as a zombie. There's a stupid scene where he gets shot a shit ton by an LMG, but somehow he lives. It's like, that's bullshit. There was no way Frank would live that as a zombie. They ruined Frank's character. He's an asshole in that game. He leaves certain survivors behind. Like, he left the one guy at the dam behind to go after Calder. And then there was this woman named Hammond he helped out, and she was wanting to ride back, and he just left him behind and ditched him. It's like, what the fuck? They made Frank West an asshole. Changed his voice actor. He looks younger than he did in Off the Record in 1, which makes no sense because he's supposed to be in his 50s. The environment sucks. It's not a fun game. It's not a good Dead Rising game. No timer. Terrible story. Stupid retcons. Shitty-ass DLC. Charging for overtime mode when it was a part of the original game. Buggy and glitchy. It doesn't even work properly as a regular video game. I remember even playing Frank's Big Package, you know, past patch version, it's still crappy. Freaking items and weapons were falling through the road. Certain NPCs, when I go up to them, they would stop shooting, but then when I go away, they would keep shooting again. The game would start to freeze and mess up after a while. Like, it was just a mess. And there was a lot of radiant missions that Fallout has where you do a mission over and over again and it never goes away. Those are annoying. Why would you put that in Dead Rising? No timer, so there's no challenge. There's so many zombies on the screen. There's zombies every fucking where. There are zombies everywhere. They're just cattle. You just kill zombie after zombie after zombie, and they don't mean anything. None of them are a threat. None of them have cool designs like Dead Rising 1. And it's just hordes of zombies just to slaughter through. It's just a generic zombie killing simulator. You don't rescue or escort survivors. It's a piece of shit game. Awful. Worst one in the series. Dead Rising 4 is definitely another one. So, yeah, that's just a few choices. This was my part in the collab of some of the worst and bad games that me and Larry the Batman fan have played. So yeah, that was my part for this collab. Now here's Larry the Batman fan with some of the worst games he's ever played. Peace. Alright, so I wanted to mention another bad game in this collab because I feel like I need just one more because I didn't mention enough. Another really bad video game that I played is Back 4 Blood. I tried this game on Game Pass. It was supposed to be the modern, basically Left 4 Dead. Some of the people who worked on Left 4 Dead worked on Back 4 Blood. And I love Left 4 Dead. I love 1, I love 2. They're amazing games. Classic franchise. One of the best zombie game series of all time. Hands down. But Back 4 Blood sucks, and it's absolutely terrible. I couldn't get into the game. I tried it on Xbox Game Pass. I could not get into the game at all. First of all, It was so fucking complicated. From the menus to the inventory to the UI, everything was just so complicated and I didn't even know what I was doing. Same with the card system. Left 4 Dead, one of the things that was fun about it was simple. It was simplistic. Sometimes simplicity is what you want. You don't want things to be too fucking complicated where you're trying to solve some kind of puzzle or it's like, what am I doing? Am I solving the Riddler's fucking clues here? Like, it's supposed to be a zombie game and me just shooting zombies and stuff first person. And that's the problem with fucking Back 4 Blood. More like Back 4 Shit. Back 4 Cum. Fuck that game. It sucks. It's terrible. It's so bad. It really is. Like I said, complicated. Didn't even know what I was doing in the menu or the inventory. Not even simplistic like Left 4 Dead. It's got this generic open hub world area like a lot of modern open world games have, and I didn't care for it. I'm like, what's this setup for? And I played it, and it just was not a fun game to play. And it just really wasn't a fun game to play. And the characters and the cast sucks. The cast for that game is trash. I didn't care for any of the characters. The characters had no personality, no charisma, no nothing to them. You know, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 were original, unique, simple, fun, and they had really good characters. Bill, Francis, Lewis, Zoe, Coach, Ellis, Nick. My personal favorite from the first one is Francis. My personal favorite from part 2 is Nick. Back 4 Blood doesn't have characters like that. It's got terrible characters that are just very one ear out the other, generic, boring, just nothing to them. I didn't give a shit about the characters. So the characters suck. The game's too complicated to manage and you don't even know what you're doing. It's way too complex. Not fun to play at all. You shoot the zombies and you're playing it and it's just not fun. It doesn't feel satisfying to kill the zombies or shoot any of them. And it's like just a bad version of Left 4 Dead. And it's just not a good way to do a Left 4 Dead style again. And it's a real shame. I always wanted to see a Left 4 Dead 3, but Back 4 Blood was just no good. You know, Left 4 Dead had style, it had personality, it had uniqueness, it had something to it. You know, Left 4 Dead had that. Back 4 Blood has none of that. Also, the art style for Back 4 Blood sucks. It's got this cartoony, fucking Fortnite art style. It's like, get that shit out of here, man. Why? Almost every game, not almost every game, but a lot of games now have that fucking Fortnite art style. And they had that for Back 4 Blood. Terrible art style, terrible character designs. The characters look stupid. They don't even have memorable looking designs. Stupid Fortnite art style. You want more proof Back 4 Blood sucks? Who's talking about Back 4 Blood in 2023? Who's still playing Back 4 Blood in 2023? I guarantee you, if you do the results, people are still playing Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 now, and they're still talking about them. You know, especially if you're a PC gamer, it never ends with Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 because you got all the mods. You know, it's like, why the fuck would you play Back 4 Blood when you can just play Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 again? Much better games, far superior. So that's another bad video game I played. Didn't finish it. Terrible. Awful. Fuck Back 4 Blood. Like I said, more like Back 4 Shit. Back 4 Cum. Fuck that motherfucking game, man. What a disappointment. I was kind of interested in that game, so I'm like, you know, maybe this will be decent or good. Left 4 Dead type game, but it absolutely sucked. And they tried this a few times. Like, off topic, there was a game called Redfall that was supposed to be like Left 4 Dead with vampires. I haven't played it, but I heard that game is bad. They need to stop trying to replicate Left 4 Dead because obviously it's not working. But just one more thing I wanted to add in this video to add an extra bad game that I played. So yeah, here's Larry the Batman fan's parts. Peace.
Very annoying. And then when you get inside the actual levels of the game, it turns into a side scroller. You cannot shoot any of the unarmed men. But some of those men are armed with guns. And guess what? You still can't shoot them. You can punch them, but that's about it. Like 3 hits and you're dead. No. This is just a really bad game for the NES. It's not a good game at all. I don't recommend it. And then I've seen the Angry Video Game Nerd reviewed this as well. He can go more in depth about this game and why it's bad. But from what I explained, I think that's good enough. It's a terrible game. Fester's Quest. Oh man, I bought this game for like $10 off of eBay, probably like 6 months ago or something, 5 months ago. Wanted to see how bad this game is because I saw the Nerd's review on it, and yeah, it's bad. It's bad, and the reason this game's bad is because you get this really crappy weapon in the game when you're shooting at these like slinky looking dudes that go like this all over the screen. They're green. Your gun sucks so bad that most of the time it just goes past them. It goes like that in a whirlwind or in a circle. It doesn't even hit them. It's like, what kind of bad programming is this? Like, this is terrible. And then later on in the game, when you get through the actual doors, when there are all these enemies coming to you, you get through the level, it turns into like this black and white, like, excuse me, maze. And you have to find out how to get through that door, or get a key to get through the door. But if you take the wrong spot, because back then, when they put mazes in games, they were not like BioShock, so it was all pixelated. So you had to really know where to go, you know. And of course we have YouTube here. This is YouTube, you know. So look it up now, but back then, in the 90s, in the 80s, you didn't have that. So what happens, you end up going out the back door. Oh, and then the enemies start coming towards you, and you start throwing down the firecrackers to kill the enemies. Blows up a few of them, but they keep coming back. That is called respawning, and not good respawning. Bad respawning. This game is terrible. Stay away from it. It's a really bad game. Not a good game. Not even for an Addams Family license. It sucks. Then we have this game, Spider-Man and the Sinister Six. This game is terrible because the controls are terrible. I mean, 1 minute you're using Spider-Man to hit the bad guys and kick them, and then the controls just change up on you. So 1 minute the controls are normal, and then the next minute the controls are all over the place. That's not a sign of a good game. And then later on in the level, it becomes very frustrating to play because a lot of the enemies in the game that you will fight, your punches go right through them, but their punches don't go right through you. So that's why this game is terrible. Stay away from this game. It's made by LJN, so that's how you know. Laughing, Joking Numbnuts made a bad game. Really terrible. I love Spider-Man as well, but they put a big stain on this game, man, and it stinks. You're better off playing Spider-Man 2 for the PS2. Because that was like the first, other than the Spider-Man game on like PlayStation, those were really the start of the good Spider-Man games. But yeah, some other bad NES games that I played, Kid Kool, Double Dragon 3, and I also played Deadly Towers. Oh man. Oh yeah, and I played the Karate Kid, and that game was terrible. Those were all really bad games. In fact, I think it goes Deadly Towers, then it goes Dick Tracy, then it goes Kid Kool, then it goes the Karate Kid, then it goes Fester's Quest, Spider-Man and the Sinister Six, and then an MLB baseball game that I played. That was also a really bad game. It was an LJN game. Now besides the NES, I sure have played some other bad games, especially on the PS2. Some of the worst games on the PlayStation 2 that I can think of off the bat, Bad Boys Miami Takedown. Basically, two cops trying to go after the bad guys, but the controls are terrible. The up goes down and the down goes up. That's bad inverted controls. I hate that. You know, I worked in GoldenEye, because you could get used to it. But Bad Boys Miami Takedown, constant issues, especially when you had a cover system, because it was supposed to be a third-person shooter. The cover system was even broken. You're behind a wall or something, you know, and then when you get out of the wall and you start shooting them, you can only be outside the wall for like 4 seconds, and then you have to go back. Excuse me. Hold on a second. Yeah, that game was bad. The movies are great. Bad Boys 2 and Bad Boys 3. Yeah, I know it's called Bad Boys for Life, but I call it Bad Boys 3. The movies were excellent. Good action movies. But that game was abysmal. And the reason is because of the controls. And the bad guys, a lot of the bad guys have better aim than you do in the game. It's terrible. Stay away from that game. I played a game on the PS2 called ESPN Winter Sports Snowboarding. That was a really crappy snowboarding game. Like, you're better off playing SSX. The SSX games that were on there were excellent snowboarding games. But before the crave of SSX, you know, SSX Tricky, SSX 3, SSX On Tour, you had crappy snowboarding games like ESPN Winter Games X or Winter Olympics X Snowboarding. What a hell of a title for a game. That's a very long title there. Very easy to screw it up. And it wasn't a good game at all. The physics in the game were just terrible. Just awful. You know, and the game was not, just wasn't good. It was complicated and not fun. I think Ken Go was a really bad ninja game for the PS2. That wasn't a good game. There's a lot of problems with that game. You're better off playing Tenchu or Ninja Gaiden. Okay, so my video apparently got too long. Couldn't get the whole thing put in to one video, so JackalGoldKick will add this part in. But yeah, some other bad games is Spider-Man Return of the Sinister Six. This game's really bad because of the controls, and your punches half the time they go through the enemies, and you're unable. Well, there are times in the game where your punches are going right through the enemies, and it changes up the controls, which is why this is a pretty bad NES game. And the thing is, I love Spider-Man, I really do, but it really stinks that this game is terrible. Really, the first Spider-Man game that was any good was the one on the original PlayStation. And of course, Spider-Man 2 being a good movie license game. So that was just disappointing. Some other games I know is really bad for the NES is Fester's Quest. You have a really crappy weapon in the game, and when you're fighting those little green slime looking dudes, the weapon circles like this and doesn't even hit half of your enemies in the game, which is really frustrating. It's also frustrating that, like, when you actually get into a room with the key and stuff to get to the other door, it's done in like a maze, and if you choose the wrong door, you end up out the back door, and there's a bunch of enemies coming your way, and there's nothing you can really do. You can shoot with that thing, but that gun really sucks. You could throw the firecrackers down, but once you're out, it doesn't really do much because the enemies keep respawning in the game, and that's why this game is really bad. You know, obviously that Superman 64 is a really bad game, And of course E.T. on the Atari, which I played for like 30 minutes and then chucked that thing out the window because that game was so bad. I really did not want to continue playing that. Games on the PS2 that I think are really bad is ESPN Winter Games X or Winter Sports Games X, something like that. That's a really bad snowboarding game. It's not good at all. It's not fun to play. And it's more realistic than fun. It's got terrible controls in the game, and it's just not fun to play. You're better off playing SSX. And the SSX games are pretty fun for snowboarding games, but not so much ESPN Winter Olympics. Some other bad PS2 games is Hidden Invasion, Bad Boys of Miami, Takedown, and also, a lot of those movie license games were no good on the PS2. A lot of them were really bad, very trashy. And the worst original Xbox game that I played had to have been Pulse Racer. And the reason that game is terrible is because, like good racing games like Need for Speed, Burnout, and even Gran Turismo, even though I'm not a big fan of that, and the Dirt series, and Flat Out, those games are all good for racing games. But Pulse Racer on the original Xbox is terrible because you can't go fast in the game. And you're racing around the track against other people. If you go too fast, you can have a heart attack. And it's like, who designed this crappy game? JackalGoldKickJGK, I think, was the company. And it's just not a good game at all. And if you don't believe me, look up gameplay on YouTube. And you'll see what I'm talking about, because that game is terrible. Other bad games on the NES is Kid Kool, The Karate Kid, Dick Tracy, which I did mention earlier. Win, Lose, or Draw. You got the Back to the Future games, which weren't very good. Bill and Ted. You had Deadly Towers. That game was terrible. Not a good game at all. Those are some of the worst games that I can think of. And like I said, 90% of the movie license games are terrible. There's only a small percentage of them that are actually decent, like Spider-Man 2 and GoldenEye and Riddick. So yeah, that's what I got to say here. JackalGoldKick, thank you for letting me be a part of this collab. And God bless you all. And thanks again to JackalGoldKick. Take care. Bye. And again, thank you for having me. Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's me, Larry the Batman fan again. And so, I had to add a third part to this video for JackalGoldKick because it still felt like I needed to cover some more games to talk about, some of the worst games that I ever played. So, I want to mention here just 2 more games, if that's okay, JackalGoldKick. I'm sure he's okay with it. Just 2 more that I feel are really bad games. The first one is for the Xbox 360. One of the worst games I ever played for the Xbox 360 is Brink. Brink is a bad first-person shooter. Yes, I know the game was also released on PlayStation 3, but it's bad on both consoles. Brink was a hyped-up first-person shooter that came out around 2010, 2011, around that time. It was hyped up to be like the next killer app. Like Halo or something. But it failed. It failed miserably because you constantly had your team that would say, "They're taking our command post. Help us, they're taking our command post." And it got to the point of the game where you're like, "Shut up. Could you please shut up?" because like they would constantly say that throughout the game, and it would never go. Your teammates in the game, the computer AI was dumb. It's not like Resident Evil where you fire your gun and Resident Evil 5 and the person that you're working with knows to get the hell out of the way. The AI in the game is dumb, and they don't do a good job at following you. They don't do a good job at going to that command post, grabbing the flag, and bringing it back. Unless you go over there yourself, it's just going to go on and on and on throughout the levels. The same old crap. And then like when you want to play online matches, a lot of times there were problems with glitches in the game. Problems with like the server cutting out, or the connection rather, cutting out. Really the only thing about that game that was okay was the shooting. That was about it. Everything else with the game just failed. It was just a failed first-person shooter. So that's why I had to put this on the list. Number 2, I would say Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. For the PS2 and the Xbox. The GameCube was the only console to escape the first game. It got the second game and the third game in the Third Age, which I will say were much better games than The Fellowship of the Ring. Hold on, I gotta take a swig. The first game was terrible because it was really slow paced and it was really boring. I heard that the later levels improved, but as a kid, as like a 13-year-old kid playing the original Lord of the Rings game on Xbox, I got it for like, I think it was $6 or $7 back then at Game Crazy, when Game Crazy was still a thing, because I was looking for a cheap game and my allowance was $10. So all those $20, $30, $40 games I couldn't afford. And there wasn't much to choose from. It was only a couple of games they had for that price. And it was between that or a game called Azuric. You know, because the games for me had to be rated E or T for teen. I was not allowed to play mature games as a child because I was growing up in a Christian home. But as far as the gameplay goes, it was whack. Like, I didn't like that game at all. Like, you were playing as Frodo in the game, and you're going through the levels. There were some things you had to collect, things that you had to do. And it was just so boring. I turned it off. Like, I never got very far. I think I played it for about a half hour, trying to figure out where to go and what to do, and then I got so bored of it, I just turned it off. And I didn't go back to it because that's how boring that game was. At least with the two towers, you could, you know, excuse me, at least with the two towers, you could like whack orcs and stuff in the game, which made it a much better game. But even that game wasn't perfect either. That game had some issues. But The Return of the King was a great movie tie-in game. Excellent game. So it's just sad that the first game based on the first movie was not very good. I wish I had some screen, like a screen where I could show you some gameplay of it. So that way y'all can see how bad that game is. Because it's really not that great of a game. But you can always look up YouTube videos here. There are people that have uploaded it, whether it was on the PS2 or the Xbox version. They look identical. The Xbox version may have had the upper hand in the graphics department, but other than that, it's the same game. So these are two other games that I don't recommend for for the Xbox 360 and the original Xbox. Definitely don't play them because they're really bad. So that's really all I got to say. Thank you again, JackalGoldKick, for letting me be a part of this collab. I appreciate it. Everybody else, thank you for watching and take care. And we hope that you enjoy our collab.